Good day and a pleasant morning to you, sir. John Jefferson L. De La Cruz. So here we are now to present our final defense entitled of Effects of the Law Enforcement's COVID-19 Pandemic in TAGUM City. But first, let me introduce to you my research group mate, Miko Campos and John Gerald Batlan. And our group number is Z2035. So, rationale. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed some key obstacles for law enforcement related to communication, resource management, the enforcement of public health restrictions, and changes to crime service patterns based on these early initial responses and obstacles during COVID-19 outbreak. The current paper highlights directions for future responses to pandemic to ensure the safety and the security of a police officer and the community served the pandemic has had hug influence on the law enforcement agencies and their activities as a result of this enormous development to provide information and to field about the patterns of the preparedness, changes, and operations training adjustment. So this theory that we anchored as our study is from Ivan Ney, so social control theory, so which states that society has the capacity to decide how to prevent crime, enforce rules, provide a good stable environment, and many more. Our study focuses on the effects of the law enforcement amid COVID-19, and this theory enables us to societal view how and why changes occurred. The changes of time, policing, and the situations created a big change to influence on law enforcement. Hence, society plays a major role in determining and perceived safety and risk for individuals during these trying times. Thus, this theory provides a vital role in giving coherent understandings of our study and providing good grounds to support our literature. The purpose of this phenomenological study was to unveil the perspective of the police officer and citizens in Tagum City, Davao del Norte in terms of law enforcement during pandemic. Their emerging experiences, challenges, and insight within the phenomenon will be analyzed in order for the researchers to come up with appropriate and related themes in the study. In these trying times, where everybody is experiencing a challenging journey, it is vital for us to know the law that we are being enforced in the society that we are part of, and develop of the patrolling to urban spaces may worsen certain behaviors, such as the food theft, and other violations commented in the particular area in Tagum City, Davao del Norte, faces the new challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. The law enforcement called imperil of control the situations despite the law enforcement officers strictly careful of the coronavirus to ensure that no one can infected. Fevers and dehydrations, let alone of the hand washing, and continue the good service to the cities. So in our study, so here is a research objective. So in general, this study is simply describe the police officers and citizens' experiences about the law enforcement during the pandemic only in Tagum City. So the first experience of our participating under insight on the emergency of the phenomenon are also disclosed in this study. So hence the following research questions were formulated in order to obtain the substantial content of this phenomenological study. So the first is, what are the experiences of the police officers in law enforcement during COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City? So, the second is, how do police cope with the emerging challenges in law enforcement during COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City? So, the last and the third is, what is the insight of the police officer and the law enforcement during COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City? So these three research objectives questions is our main question.
Good day, sir. And now, let's proceed to research participants. The target respondent to be associated with are required to have exposure experience with the law. Hence, we choose the police officer that serve as the main qualification for the respondent selection. There will be 14 gathered respondents to reduce the risk of undergoing bias group. The number of participants will also enhance the precision of the researchers' estimates and assess the power of the study to draw conclusion. To gather the participants, voluntary response sampling technique in which a sample made a participant who have voluntarily chosen to participate as a part of the sample group. Although this sampling technique may be biased, it is more affordable and easier to conduct for the researchers. Materials and instruments. In this study, we use online and face-to-face interviews. The online interview will be conducted virtually via Google Meet, and the link will be disseminated throughout various social networking sites, SNS. The respondent will then be directed to a new tab with the researchers. Introduction and purpose of the study were discussed before asking the participants in online and face-to-face interviews. In addition to that, a consent form will also be distributed along the questionnaire as a form of agreement between the researchers and the actual respondent. And with our data analysis, the data processing step was the most complex and difficult of all phases a qualitative study. The researchers studied a series of process and procedure based on obtained data in order to provide explanation, understanding, or interpretation of the individual or circumstance they were examining. As a result, we employed a thematic analysis in our research. A data set, such a series of interviews or focus group transcript, is subjected to thematic analysis, which look for meaning patterns. It also analyzes massive volumes of data and groups them into themes based on their similarities. These themes help us make sense of the text and derive meaning from it. And now here are profile of participants. Before the conduct of the focus group discussion and in-depth interview, we asked the participant to fill out the questionnaire about their personal information necessary. As enumerated in the profile of participants, this question established the participant identification, although their real names are hidden through their aliases such as number of years, civil status, gender, and occupation. As you can see in our table number 1, we have our FGG participants with their different classification of age, gender, and civil status, same as with table number 2 in our IDI respondents.
Good day, ma'am and sir. My name is John Geraldine Batalan, and my report is all about chapter summary about this amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City. Chapter summary. The method used in this study is qualitative to gather data about the effect of law enforcement amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City. The respondents were grouped into two, namely those participating in the in-depth interview and focus group discussion. They were asked the same set of questions containing two main questions and 10 sub-questions, after which the researchers were able to analyze the data and formulate names-related responses. They should get the core idea of how to understand in a nutshell this holistic approach how we study. A result taken from the participating responses both in the in-depth interview and focus as much as this study is grounded only the law enforcement amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City, the following are recommended. Accordingly, human rights and jurisdiction status have provided the law enforcement amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City. Police agencies should also focus their effort on their local community AMIDST amidst and utilizing problem-solving approach to address. In other words, the focus of the agency should be directed to reduce community concerns and anxieties. In effort to stop agency resources, departments should review the recovery and lead to new agency vision, followed as example as they respond to the future pandemic and issue warning, sermon, or citation for minor and non-violent offense, such as misdemeanor, probation parole, violation, eviction, and other offense. These plans should also frequent review and update to incorporate new information and lesson learned from past experience. This study that were conducted by the researcher and were based on the data collected and were verified to the person involved. Further, we gathered the experience of the police officer in law enforcement during COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City. In terms of having difficulties in pandemic, enforcing public health measures, ensuring compliance for police enforcement, health protocols, and having change in social life and attitude. Social is the coping mechanism of the police officer with the emerging challenge in law enforcement during COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City. In terms of having positive mindset, become resilient, adapting to the new normal setting, and having external support. Last, the insight of the police officers in law enforcement during COVID-19 in Tagum City, such as being optimistic, ensuring strict compliance to protocols, attending programs and seminars for police function, and abiding the law of the police protocols and regulation. Finally, the result of the research showed that the participants are giving a real statement about the study. The need is apparent to explore various cases of the law enforcement amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in Tagum City, under meaning to improve the generalizability of the lesson learned. Thank you.